Hello, my name is Emeka Onyago and welcome to our latest episode, where we have the privilege of hosting a special guest, Mrs. Betty Abba, a renowned advocate for women and children's rights in Nigeria. Mrs. Abba's journey is a testament to the relentless pursuit and courage, with a distinguished career in journalism at notable publications like Newswatch and Tell magazine, and an enriching experience at the Rocky Mountain News in the USA. Mrs. Abba has used her voice and pen to champion the cause of the oppressed. Her passion led her to establish Sea Hope, a non-profit dedicated to the rights and the development of the marginalized young people, especially girls, in response to the widespread violations of young people's rights across Nigeria. A holder of a bachelor's in English and Literary Studies and a master's in Literature and English, she has also significantly contributed to the environmental rights, particularly advocating for women in the Niger Delta region and throughout Nigeria. Mrs. Abba's work in journalism and activism has garnered her numerous accolades, including national and international awards and fellowship. She's not just a media personality, but a beacon of hope, fighting for social justice causes like Bring Back Our Girls, Esiolu, Justice for Ochenaya, to name a few. Her efforts in community development, especially in places like Makoko, has drawn global attention. In this episode, we share insights from her vast experience in activism, her vision for the future, and her relentless efforts in making Nigeria a better place for women and children. Stay tuned as we dive into the world of this extraordinary woman who continues to inspire and impact lives through her tireless work.
I'm happy to have you here. The first thing we have to start from somewhere. So the first thing we would like to know is you've had a very diverse career, including journalism stints in Nigeria and abroad. Clearly from your profile. How did that experience prepare you for a role as an advocate for Nigerian youth, children, and the underrepresented groups as well as the environment?
Thank you so much. I would say that what originally prepared me for what I'm doing today, it's much more than the journalism experience I've had. I would describe myself as someone who grew up in the ghetto. And I came from the back of the city, the backside of the city, back home in Benue State. I call it the back of the woods. And so I witnessed a lot of oppression. I witnessed a lot of marginalization. I witnessed a lot of poverty. And I've always, from my childhood, I've always been angry at the situations I see around me. I've always been very reflective on ways in which those situations could be changed. And I also grew up in a very large polygamous home. So all the intrigues, the dynamics of the polygamous home was part of the things I grew up seeing. And so, I've always struggled against many of those dynamics. So I've always been an activist from a very young age. And then at the age of 14, and I also grew up as a church girl. And so at the age of 14, I started mobilizing young people from around the neighborhood for a Bible club. I had a Bible club as a 14-year-old. And so I've always been very conscious of the negativities around me. And I've always had that tendency. I've always had that aspiration to see how I could change things in my own little way. So I mobilize children, talk to them about lessons from the Bible, moral lessons and all of that, and inspire them, motivate them. So I've always, so it's actually, it's much more like my childhood. But of course, journalism played a very big role because going to a well-established publication like Newswatch, courtesy of my media mentor, Dan Agbese, and then also going on to Tell magazine. Those were the biggest names in news publishing, news magazine publishing in Nigeria. And so that was a very good opportunity for me to hone my writing skills because I started writing from the age of 10. And then also, I happen also to be on what we call the back of the book desk, where we focus not on politics or the fashion of the day mostly, but we're focusing on the less privileged in in the society were writing on issues about mental health, issues about poverty, about health issues. And most of the time, we're focusing on the most downtrodden people in the society, not going to stand at the airport and write about politicians coming and describing their what they were wearing and all of that. Is very, very irritating for me, actually, when people focus so much attention on politicians, where the vast majority of the populace are poor and are struggling with serious issues that needed urgent attention, like poverty, lack of education, lack of access to basic facilities. And so I was just lucky that I was put on that desk of focusing on people, on the everyday, on ordinary people, on the ordinary citizens, and then the issues that people were battling with. So that really helped a lot. It gave me a lot of insight to what people were going through, because we're going all over Lagos, talking to people, traveling even outside Lagos, going to Budukatu Ranch, the Salt Village in Nasarawa State, and so many places, and the refugee camps in Benue and all of that. So that was quite fulfilling for me, and it triggered a kind of a desire for me to focus more on the downtrodden, the forgotten millions in Nigeria, to see how their issues can be highlighted more and see how they can get the attention. So my going into activism and all of that in the later part of my journalism career, delving into activism was more of the build-up from my childhood and then my journalism experience.
Yeah. So essentially, you are saying that your experience in what you describe as a backwater town.
Back of the woods.
Not even the woods. The
back of the woods.
Back of the woods. The polygamous home, and then it gave you the incentive, the desire to do more and be able to focus on people who are downtrodden. It's very interesting. I was out in Nigeria in the summer, so that was in August, and we did a road trip. Myself and my family, the kids, we did a road trip from Abuja to Enugu. So we did pass through Benue. You get to see all these places as I had always seen it when I was growing up, and you see a lot of need, an extreme amount of need, if I might put it that way, for development and all kinds of things that are needed out there. It's quite commendable to see people focus on those kind of things. So in essence, you run the Center for Children and Children's Health, Education, Orientation, and Protection. Could you describe the organization's mission? Because you seem to have talked about it to some degree already. So,
okay, so like I said earlier, I've always worked with young people when I was from my childhood, when I was 14, starting at the age of 14, and then in secondary school, I also founded the girls group, Sisters Aflame, when I was about 17. And so I've always focused on young people. I've always had that flair, that attachment, that emotional attachment with young people, with children. And so when I started work with the environmental rights action, I were touring different parts of the Niger Delta, and then I was head also of the women's campaign. And so I got to see a lot of poverty, a lot of deprivation, a lot of dehumanization, a lot of despoilation of the environment in the Niger Delta, in Badagry, and then parts of the West African sub-region for some of the projects that I coordinated as well. And so it was very triggering for me, because each time I get to the community, I was supposed to focus on the women, but then my focus would eventually be on the children, because children are actually much more vulnerable than women. We do a lot of women's rights and all of that, and it's very, very essential. It's very vital. But in the entire equation of injustice in any system, the people that bear the biggest brunt of the injustice, of the suffering, of the deprivation, marginalization, are actually the children, because completely powerless. And so I was just, I got that motivation to say, okay, maybe I should just move on and focus more on the children. And then I was coming in with a lot of, with my media skills. I was coming in with a burning passion to see how I could make a difference. So what can we do for the children? So our mission basically was to focus on the children at the very, children, the most vulnerable of children, the most vulnerable of young people, to see how we can intervene in their cases, to see how we can engage them, to see how they can receive the light of education. I describe education as the lightning rod, because no one encounters education and remains the same. It's just extremely transformative. And then there were a lot of lack in many of the communities, even in Lagos, metropolitan Lagos. Many children are not in school. Even those that are in school are not consistent. A lot of school dropout. And then besides Lagos, you talk about other rural areas and then other settlements. Like Lagos has over 100 slum communities. And each of the mega cities, you have all those slum communities, which no one really talks about. And then the young people continue to be at the receiving end of the marginalizations, of the very bad social conditions, socio-economic conditions. So I decided, okay, we need to engage these children, not just talk about their issues, but we need to engage them so that we can highlight their plight, the ways that the children's rights have been violated. How can we highlight their plight? How can we engage and empower them educationally in skills, in motivation, ensure that they have that sense of belonging with the rest of the society. They don't end up as area boys, area girls, as people who have become nuisance to the community, to the society. So our mission is to ensure that as many as possible among the demographies of young people in Nigeria, especially in the settlement, in the impoverished communities, are empowered and situated in a position where they can be at par with the rest of the young people in other parts of the country. That they are not, so that the narrative about children in these communities being nuisance, being criminals, and all of that, they will is it despoil? They will cancel those notions, and then those people, the children are now in a position where they are contributing positively to the progress of the society, not as nuisance, not people that are forgotten. So it's about bringing the light of education. It's about bringing the spotlight on their situation. It's about ensuring that the conditions in which they found themselves are changed, and it's extremely, extremely fulfilling. Because I discover when you go to the communities, you're engaging with the children, who among the children need to be put in school, need to be empowered, children need to be mentored and all of that. It doesn't take so much energy, it doesn't take so much resources. It's just by having the interest to engage these people who most of the time have been criminalized, stigmatized, marginalized, and pushed to one side of the society and say they do not matter, they do not count. Because that's the body language of the government and the generality of the society.
Yeah.
So that's
So it sounds like you're saying that one of your motivations in doing this is to empower the downtrodden, because you also have an affinity with them based on where you came from. You don't bother about the politicians and all the big these things that these kids they have their lives every day, going day by day, and it's if people don't care about them, they're going to end up in bad situations.
Yes, and most of the time when I engage these children, I let them know that we have something in common. I talk freely about my growing up years. My father married 5 wives and gave birth to about 30 of us. So you can imagine that very large. Many people express surprise when I talk about that. And so that's the situation I grew up. So you have like so many children teaming around. There's a lot of confusion and all of that. And then I didn't even get to go to school on time. Because my father didn't used to believe in girl education. He believed girls should be groomed and married off as soon as they are teenagers, so that they do not derail, they do not get pregnant and all of that. But then he changed his mind, and that was how I was able to get to school at the age of 9. And so I tell people that whatever situation you find yourself, I was probably there or even worse. And then you can make a lot of difference, just like I'm making now. You can travel abroad. You can be somebody. You can run your own organization. Doesn't matter where you come from. Doesn't matter the parenthood you had and all of that. So they see in me a picture of someone who was like them and who, like me, can actually excel. So I'm a motivation to so many of them. And I use my situation to talk to them a lot of the time. And I said, your background doesn't really count. No one has actually asked me, who is your father? Who is your mother? Nobody has asked me. So, and I tell them, you have inbuilt in you skills, potentials that can be tapped for the greatness of your society, for greater impact. As long as you're focused, you get an education. Quality education is extremely important. So for me, growing up in that kind of situation, it's no longer a minus, it's a plus, because people use me as an example, as a symbol of someone who came from that kind of background and is making exploits and is making a lot of difference. And so the children see in me someone that they can model their life after.
Oh, that's a very profound story. Your father must. I don't know if he's still alive, but he must be.
My dad is almost 98. He's very proud of me now, and he has become an advocate for female education. He has become an advocate for female education. But I have my mother. My mother passed about 20 months ago. She
sorry about that.
Was extremely proud of me. My mother is a real motivation for most of what I do, because she was someone who looked out for her neighbors and for everybody. She was, we call her mother of multitudes. And then she had a burning passion for education, and she made sure all 7 of us get quality education, the education that she couldn't get, because as a woman, the parents discouraged her from getting an education. And then she had this profound philosophical mind. She saw that people who were educated were advanced. Even the women who were educated were getting married to doctors and educated and rich people. So she wanted every one of us to be educated. And here I am today, and also the rest of my 6 siblings.
Wow, that's impressive. How many boys and girls did your mother have, by the way?
3 boys and 4 girls. I'm the first girl.
You're the first girl. Okay, that seems to motivate you as well. Being the leader of the pack, I think inherently it tends to motivate. I'm the youngest of 2, so. I don't know if that's probably less motivated.
When I talk about the large number of our family.
In my case, I have a longer story that I wish that I grew up around a lot of people. And my mom ended up also being an only child through sickle cell and the Civil War and everything. So I did grow up amongst a wider family of people. It made my mother paranoid too. So when I was like 18, she was always, you see, mine is the reverse. When I was 18, my mother was trying to marry me off. It's not my older sister. She's trying to marry off as quickly as his new sister tries to marry off quickly.
The one is your children that will inherit the family. Well,
my mother did well for herself. I mean, she's 70. She went to nursing school, then studied law, and she did all well for herself. But my case is the reverse. So, but I can relate in terms of I grew up around a family which is a lot larger. So I looked at up until adulthood, I looked at all of them as my brothers and sisters. But then again, when you become an adult and there's a Jay-Z song that you don't know your friends until all of you don't need each other because you're all successful. Then you know who your friends are. So, it is indicative of my distance. But so that being said, what would you say are the main challenges that, and concerns for Nigerian children in the area of health overall?
I think generally, the lack of information and also the lack of facilities. Information in terms of we don't have information about the implications of some of the habits that children, that young people imbibe out of especially peer pressure and the influence of the internet. My father, I usually I like to use the example of my dad. He used to be a smoker, and then he quit when he was about 42, 45 years from my calculation, because nobody told him that smoking was bad. Like probably on TV as a young man growing up in the 50s, 60s, and an adult married with a lot of family, with a very large family in the 70s. He saw as smoking as a status symbol. He saw the white people that came, they were always smoking. So he also took to smoking. He said he had no idea that smoking could kill. He had no idea that smoking could have any negative impact on one's health, on one's lungs. As at the time he had an encounter that changed his view forever. He had already started having issues with his lungs. He had already started vomiting. Said there was a day he vomited, and some of the smokes, some of the tobacco crumbs were coming out from inside of him. But he had no idea. He could not really link what was happening to him with his habits. And then he said he used to be a driver. He drove to one market, Afo market in Benue State. We live very close to the Enugu border, so we have a lot in common. It's also called the Afo market, Oaho.
Oh, market.
Yes. We saw some health personnel from the Ministry of Health in Enugu that came into the market, and they were talking about the dangers of tobacco smoking. And then they had this graphic warning illustration, pictures about showing people the lung of a smoker. And he said, what? Is it what I'm doing to myself? And that was how my dad quit smoking. That was around 1974 or so. And I believe that's probably part of the reason why he's still alive. He's almost 90. There was no way we would have had my dad alive today if he had continued with that smoking habit. And he quit because of that singular encounter with people who came, health workers who came on that health outreach, on an enlightenment campaign. So you see so many young people are into drugs, for instance, these days. They have no idea of what the damage that it does to their mental health and their entire life, how it corrodes the entirety of their lives. And we don't have much of that information. Government is not really focused on young persons' health. We have so many focus on road, on facilities, which we don't really get at the end of the day anyway. So there's a need for much more focus on young people's health so that they can even know the implication of what they get into. We're starting in collaboration with a group called Parenting Now. We're starting a new campaign on drug abuse. And we've not really even taken up. We're planning a conference, and there's so much interest. It has generated so much interest because so many parents have children who are hooked, who are drug addicts, who have dropped from school, who are in mental homes. I mean, whose lives have been so terribly damaged that there's like no hope anymore. Because anything that affects the brain, because Indian hemp, for instance, is so common. You find it everywhere in Nigeria, and they have access unhindered access to it. And Indian hemp in particular has such a profound impact on the brain, and most of the time it's irreversible. And many of these people don't know. So that is a major issue. And then you talk about facility. It's not just for children, for everybody. We don't have adequate health facilities. We don't have adequate health personnel. People are migrating to other parts of the world. Health workers, which are a vital part of the society, are migrating in droves, in thousands to the West in search of the greener pasture, or even to Asia and the Middle East. And then we're all feeling the impact. So the lack of adequate health information, the lack of adequate health facilities, the lack of adequate health personnel is a major, major problem that has bedeviled not just young people, but the entire population.
Yeah, that's very profound. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is that basic information is lacking just basic things that you don't just be able to, just to prevent bad outcomes in terms of their health or bad outcomes,
Like, sorry to interrupt. Like my former organization, Environmental Rights Action, I used to go to schools in Lagos, Ogun State, Bayelsa, Edo. Every time, Abuja, Kano. Every time I see myself in any parts of the country, I just look for schools to go talk to them. And then we have these huge publications on the dangers of tobacco use. And I used to talk to the children. And every single outing, we will have hundreds of children. Most of the outings will have hundreds of children. And then they will be wrapped in attention, listening to me, and they were so intrigued, and you could see that they were hearing this for the first time. I was telling them about the dangers of tobacco use, how it damages their lungs and all the vital parts of their bodies, how it can derail them in life, and they graduate from tobacco use to using hard drugs and all of that. And then almost, I think every single place I've been to, the children will ask me at the end of when we have question and answer, I said, why is government still allowing tobacco use if it causes so much damage to the human body? Why is government still allowing it? I say, well, we've had talks about choices and all of that, but I hope that one day tobacco will be banished, will be banned from human use. But they're really intrigued. They're really intrigued that government will allow that kind of thing to be in circulation and it's being sold to citizens. So it's to show you the lack of information and to show you how the minds of young people work. They really want information. They can change if they get adequate information about health, on health-related issues. But we don't have much of resources for people to go around doing all of that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'm more of a libertarian, so I don't believe in banning anything. I believe in the opposite. I believe in more information and more access, but that's just me. But it's understandable.
In a place like US, you have taxes as part of the ways to discourage people from smoking. We have a lot imposition of very big taxes, and they make the tobacco products very expensive. There is ban in smoking in public places. Some beaches you cannot even smoke. I mean, beaches outside. There are a lot of policies to discourage smoking. Then there's graphic warning. They'll put the lung of a smoker, someone with throat cancer, and they say it can give you throat cancer. It can give you. I mean, to discourage people. Well, in Nigeria, the laws are not. The laws have been passed on tobacco use, for instance, but they are not even enforced. It's not just about passing; they are not enforced, and so people. And then you cannot sell to under 18. But even a 1-day-old baby, if the 1-day-old baby can walk and can talk, you can go to the nearest kiosk and buy tobacco products. So the laws are not strict. So I would. I beg to argue with you to say that if I had my way, that tobacco should be banned. I mean, it shouldn't even be speculation. I mean, what is that for? What do we use it for? People who are suicidal, who are hooked on smoking, they are suicidal. They see that it's going to kill them, but they're smoking because there's nicotine, and then they don't have any choice. These people are helpless, and we need to help them by banning it totally. Not to say it's a choice thing. They don't have any choice. They are addicted. I mean,
I see your passion for it. I just from a public policy or philosophical angle, I just really disagree with that. And I'll give you a good example.
The laws work. The system works.
It does. But it's also it doesn't work. It also has its problems, though, because here's the thing. So I live in New York, for instance. My cousins come and they smoke. A pack of cigarettes here, maybe, I don't know, $13. I don't smoke cigarettes.
Yes.
So if you're coming from Nigeria, even when Naira was a lot less and you're spending 13, 20, it's a lot, exactly like you're saying, a lot more expensive.
Yes.
However, in the US, they've jacked up the taxes a lot more. They've gone after e-cigarettes, United States brands, for instance, because a lot of United States brands were having e-cigarettes. But what has happened is there's now a proliferation there's now a substitute. There are cheaper things called like cigalos, and there are cheaper e-cigarette brands from China that cost a lot less. So it's very similar to what happened in the early 20th century, where you actually had, forgotten her name, she led the abolition of alcoholism in, and this is not, again, I think what you're doing is fantastic for now. I just think sometimes, the information is probably where it's my more philosophical view, be more of information. So you had them ban alcohol, constitutional amendment to ban alcohol. And what happened was a bigger degradation of society, because alcohol now even became a more congregational point of, it almost became like a religion. You had stuff like speakeasies, people became more and more drunk. Everybody realized that this was useless. And they went back and unbanned alcohol and created laws where you could drink under certain restrictions to safeguard from other people getting harmed by you. America used to be a lot bigger in preventative health, which they are not now. That's a whole different conversation, right? But in essence, they realized more information in terms of the dangers of alcohol is a lot better, was a lot more effective than this thing. But again, I understand your passion. I understand some of these things. People feel passionate in a way. The debate more to me would just be more of the solutions. It's not, you're completely right in terms of if everybody could stop smoking somehow, some way, it would be better for everybody. So that's the truth. It's true.
Smokers, they're passive smokers as well. That bear the brunt of smoking. I was in Kano State in 2010, and within 30 minutes, I felt like running away from the reception. And it's one of the biggest hotels in Kano. I could not believe it. Some persons were smoking non-stop. And then they had restaurant workers. The workers were there, the hotel workers, the people at the reception. And then they had to be there for 10, 15 hours a day, every day, inhaling the smoking. So I walked up to the person, I think he's a Middle Eastern or an Asian. And I said, sir, do you realize that you're harming other persons here? Because you're forcing us to smoke. Why are you doing that? Why don't you smoke outside? And he said, oh, I'm sorry about it, that I always smoke here and nobody has ever complained. So I felt everybody was all right. I said, no, they just don't want to offend you, but it's not all right because you're forcing us to smoke and it's not right. So, like you said, if smoking is banned, I think we'll all be better for it. And maybe we'll live longer, actually. I think we'll live longer. And the last one I checked, smoking costs about 6 million deaths every year. Every single year, 6 million deaths, avoidable deaths, preventable deaths.
There are those who will also push back and point to their relatives who are. I mean, these are ongoing. Did I have an uncle that just?
About smoking, they say, I have an uncle that lived to be 90 years. He was smoking. I said, okay, but you don't have the same body. Is it
makeup?
Body makeup. And then who told you, if that your uncle was smoking and he lived up to 90 years, he probably had a very strong longevity gene. He could have lived up to 110, even 120. Because smoking actually reduces one's lifespan. It takes away, no matter how we want to paint it. I mean, it takes away. Anyway,
it's very interesting.
Smoking, but I'm very passionate. I think I'm an extreme right in some issues. Like, for instance, I wonder how people have to gather to watch people do wrestling, like young, like your children. You leave your home and then you pay to watch people beating up themselves. I mean, does it make any sense? Maybe some of us, when we talk about people, look like bullet. One day, I think the world will come to its senses. And then boxing, for instance, is so forceful. The way it is, it exerts a lot of force on the opponent that many boxers end up with mental health issues. They'll end up with brain damage. Why do I have to do a sport that leaves me brain dead? I mean, I die in the process. And then people say, why are you talking about sport? Boxing is my favorite sport. I say it's not my favorite sport. Whenever I watch boxing, I become almost hypertensive because I can't watch two human beings punching themselves and then everybody is happy. I mean, are we children or animals? Well, so I'm just an extreme right.
Yeah. Trying to take away some of my favorite things, but I mean, I'm a massive combat sports fan. I'm a massive combat. I go for the UFC. I was at Israel's last two fights, Usman. I was at Joshua's fights. That's right there. I'm a massive fan. That's how people see it. It's the same way people see like football and other things.
Football is a very sweet game.
Yeah, American football. People say American football. So people die in soccer and football.
They're not out to punch themselves. They're not out to. They're out to wrestle for the control of the ball. They're not out to be punching themselves. Beating themselves and inflict damage. Anyway, maybe I'm still a village. Maybe I'm actually a village woman. Maybe I need them.
Some of the people that love these things come from. Most of the people that actually get involved directly, for the most part, are from less privileged backgrounds, to be honest. And if you look at a lot of them, Mike Tyson, for instance, when he grew up in New York, he grew up in a prostitute's house. Yeah, he became a ward of the States. Without boxing, he would be probably a pimp, probably dead. So many of them, if you start going through the list, most of these guys, without boxing, that was their out. That was their thing. They were never going to be. They were
the meal tickets.
Yeah, they were not going to. You could say, well, go and do academics. It's not for everybody. Everybody doesn't need to. That's a huge debate.
There are other sports. There are other less harmful sports. Anyway, there are positive sides to all of this. But I'm really just concerned about the damage that is inflicted on their bodies.
Yeah. So what would you say would be the major issues in the educational sector in Nigeria?
I think it's the major issue is lack of government interest. Or the political will to improve the educational sector. For instance, Nigeria has ranked as having the highest number of out-of-school children in the world for several years. And if there is any sector that the Nigerian government should put more focus, if there's any sector that the Nigerian government should pour in all its resources, all its energies, it should be the educational sector. The educational sector continues to have one of the lowest budgets every year. That shows that the people in power, the policymakers, the people at the helms of affairs are not really interested in education. And it's depressing because Nigeria, our population, almost 70% of our population demography are young people. So if the young people are not educated, if we do not invest in their human capital development, what future are we looking up to? So I think it's something that is very is depressing, and I believe that with when we continue to put it in the public burners, that something will happen. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of just pretext on the part of government trying to look good. At the end of the day, the policies they put out are not implemented, they are not enforced. At the end of the day, a lot of corruption also comes in the way. For instance, in the last government, former Vice President Oshibajo, under his office, had a school feeding program, which for me, as someone working with children from vulnerable communities, it's extremely exciting for me. It's a very sweet program. But then it did not achieve its optimum success because there was a lot of corruption. There are so many. I've never been. I go around the communities in Lagos, and I've never been to any school and then seeing children eating. I don't know of any school in Lagos where the school feeding program takes place. Maybe there are, but I don't know. And I'm from Benue, and I know that many of the contracts were given to traditional rulers and their wives. And many of the schools were never supplied. Many of these children were never given any food. They just give the people money every month, and it never gets done. So corruption is a major clog in the wheel of progress in terms of educational development in Nigeria. There's a lot that needs to be done. One of the programs I worked on in the last, since 2018, has been on period poverty. And it's one that is extremely close to my heart. Many girls cannot go to school, or they have to be absent from school every month because they cannot afford sanitary products. It looks very vague, and it's something that men like you may not really connect with because you're a man and then you're from a part of the world where buying something like sanitary products for women and girls is not an issue, but it is an issue for millions of women and girls in Nigeria, and it impacts on girl education in Nigeria because these girls have to be absent from school like 5 days, 3 days every month, and then they lag behind academically, and then it increases the gender gap in education. So there's a lot of issues that government is not really interested. And I wish time I talk about period poverty, the need for government to roll out programs on free distribution of pads to schools, to reduce or remove taxation on sanitary products, because most of them are imported. I mean, people look at me strangely. Why are you talking about this kind of thing? People feel very uneasy, even women rights activists, because it's not one of the things I want to talk about. You're talking about widowhood rights. You're talking about women empowerment. You're talking about female genital mutilation, which are very important as well. But period poverty, the lack of access to basic pads, sanitary product is also a major issue because of period stigma, because of period taboo. People are ashamed to talk about it, but it's an issue and it's impacting tremendously on education in Nigeria. And it's something that government has to face. And it doesn't cost them anything to remove or reduce taxes for a start on sanitary products. Just remove the taxes and then the prices crash. And then people can buy instead of using rags or just staying back at home, not going to school or compromising, getting into sex in order to get money and then getting infected or getting into teenage pregnancy and all of that. So those are issues that need to be highlighted. And because they are some of the major challenges or obstacles to education in Nigeria. So fixing the period poverty, putting more budget in the educational sector, and fixing corruption. They are major issues.
Yeah, that's something I never really, listening to you now, that's something I never really grappled with, that people will miss school because they have their period at that time of the month. It's very, I know like in America, they have parts of America where they give out sanitary, which, America is a different place, obviously. But I don't feel like it's a big issue in Nigeria. When you say big issue, I mean, I think it's a easily solvable issue in terms of not even removing the taxes, in my opinion. I think it's empowering industries like a lot more, which they won't do, by the way. I don't see them doing it because of the stigma of if you empower local people to have industries a lot more, you feel like there'll be how they call it, federal character distortions. Let's put it that way. They call it affirmative action in America, but federal, well, some people will do better than others. So let's keep everybody. But I think that would be the best thing to do.
So urgent, but in my mind, I think removing tax will reduce the cost, but then having a program of free distribution of pads to schools, at least public schools, where most of the girls from low-income communities are probably attending, will go a long way to make a lot of difference. In Kenya, it's been on for, I think, since 2015. It's been on. The Kenyan government supplies pads to schools every month, to public schools all over Kenya. Parts of Uganda are on it. Swaziland has removed taxes, and in Scotland, and Scotland is a rich country. The standard of living in Scotland is quite high, but Scotland made sanitary products free to all women and girls within the reproductive age bracket. It's free every month.
Yeah, they can simply just get industries and then patronize those industries in Nigeria to supply all these things for free, and then the government subsidize that. Yeah, instead of, because I get what you're saying. I would assume that most of the female products like that in Nigeria are probably imported in Nigeria. The way it is.
Most of them, they can be empowered to mass produce and then crash the price and make it easily affordable. But we also have the issue of corruption. I remember during former President Obasanjo's time, they had issue. Most of the fabrics sector shut down. People making wrappers and all those things. Textile industry shut down. The entire textile industry sector, textile sector shut down. And then he pumped up, I think about the $200 million. The money was so huge, my head was spinning in the 20s. Yes, around $200 million into it, and it wasn't revived. That almost the same amount was pumped into the railway, and nothing happened. So corruption is very huge. Corruption is huge. But at least if we can, one of the ways to really trace this and make this successful is that you are giving so amount every month as a contractor, and you have to supply so to this school. The school must get it. If they don't get it, so there will be like a sort of monitoring to ensure that this money is given out and then is distributed to this school. It's easily monitored, and it will be. I think it will be more effective. Though they can look at the option of empowering industry and all of that. But I think the most urgent thing is to supply. There are organizations, government agencies supplying free condoms to the public. So I believe that providing free sanitary products will also be a good idea.
Yeah. That being said, so you typically talk with Nigerian youths who, the cliche used to be the youths are the leaders of tomorrow. And even so, you can see most of the Nigerian leaders are people who have been there for a long time, or when they get there, they have no intentions of ever leaving the stage in any way. So if you were, when you talk with the youths, if you were to address the youths about this predicament, what would you tell them?
I think we as young people, we need to get the right education, and then we need to also develop ourselves. Most young people are not ready to develop themselves. They're hooked on the internet. They're not reading. They're not developing themselves. And so we have to mobilize and galvanize our young people to be physically set. That's not indulging in drugs and all other youthful vices that will compromise their health. And then they have to develop themselves, read wide, get the right quality education, struggle. You can even actually put yourself through school just to have to be empowered enough to take up leadership the position, because I know for sure that nothing lasts forever. The old people are not going to be there forever. They're not going to be there forever. So we have to be prepared to take over power. And then we have to make a difference. You've seen cases of young people getting into power, and then they're compromised. They're easily compromised. We have a major scandal out of the humanitarian ministry. And the minister that has just been suspended, I think she's about just 37 years. So
she came from your school.
From Unical, okay.
Yeah, she came from Unical. Actually spent time growing up in Calabar, but that's a whole different story. Actually did Unical for a couple of months before I left.
It's embarrassing. She's not been indicted yet, but you know that there's no smoke without fire. And we've had other young people as well who got into positions of power, and then they are not any different. But I believe we have to make it a conscious effort, because the world is changing, and Nigeria cannot be an exception. The prime minister of the president of France came in when he was, I think, 33, and then he just appointed a prime minister who is 32 or 34.
He came at about 38, but the current prime minister he has is 34.
It's 34, yes. When he came, he was younger. And then the president of Canada is young. Obama was in his 40s.
Obama was 46 when he came in. The president of Canada was, I think, 45, thereabouts. The prime minister of the UK came in at 43, current one.
Yes. So the dynamics are changing, and it's going to catch up with us. The people in power now are not going to be there forever, and they cannot do otherwise. So young people will take over. I'm very optimistic about that, but we have to be prepared. We've had people get into power, and then they cannot articulate their thoughts. They are so shallow, because all they've ever wanted to be is politicking and then get into power. They were not prepared. How prepared are our young people? You saw what happened recently. I don't know if you follow the trend, where people were basically selling certificates. The universities in Benin Republic and other West African countries were selling certificates. And then there was a special investigation about the one in Benin Republic. And then someone was there, I think, for 6 weeks, and then they gave him his degree, and then he went
Actually, he never went there. He got it.
Never went there. He just got someone to secure it for him, and the process took about 6 weeks, and then he was serving. That was like an international scandal. And then someone came in, the National Association of Nigerian Student President from Benin Republic came in to Channels TV to defend it. And he was so shallow. People were so appalled. People were just, the outrage was so in a way, he confirmed what we suspected, that the whole thing was just a mess.
Because to push back a little bit, right? Top to bottom in Nigeria, that's the case. You have a president who, in court in the US, the school literally didn't, and it's a very corrupt school, by the way. Literally said that is not the person that has that certificate is a woman. With the social security number here. But we ignored it, and professors in Nigeria, so-called professors, quote unquote, in Nigeria came in and defended it. To the point that they told us that, which was amazing, they told us that you can just print your certificate in America. I'm like, wow, I never knew that. I'm just fucking 30 years in the West, just finding that out. But, people believed within Nigeria. But if you look at, and it's not just from top to the bottom, the guy sitting in Aso Rock, top to the bottom, you look at a lot of these people, and to me, it even made me question a lot of people who claim credentials from, you have degree mills from the UK, by the way. You have very non-accredited universities in America too. They're not accredited by anybody, but they're issuing, and you have terrible, so a lot of these, politicians in Nigeria already brandish these questionable certificates. And because there is a lack of investigative journalism, so to me, it was interesting that he came and it became an issue and people are talking about it, but from top to bottom in Nigeria, it's the norm.
It's a reflection of the system, and it's quite sad. It's a reflection of the system. And when you talk about the present leadership, it also goes to show that every segment of the Nigerian society is compromised. Every segment. The judiciary, the media, even the religious sector. Every single segment of the Nigerian society. So it's a very deep systemic rot that will take a long time to deal with. And we're hoping that we'll hack at it one issue at a time and try to manage the situation and try to be the best that we can and try, to just make the little difference that we can in this very pervasive system. But everything you said is right, and it's quite sad. But then we decided not to lose hope. Like the our organization, we one of our motto or a catchphrase, we say we see hope. So we just see, the organization is actually called See Hope. So we just say we see hope. So we are still very optimistic that there could be a change somehow, someday.
Yeah, understandable. So, you see, Nigeria is notorious for paltry investment in education, with the dwindling earnings, rising population, more need for expenditure. Overall, rising debt levels, sectoral demands. I think Nigeria can't even with 100% of its earnings at this point, even with oil prices rising last couple of weeks, it can't meet up its debt obligations. So if you were to address this would you say there's any hope for rescuing the country's educational sector? What would it take to turn around the country's the educational system? What would you say that?
Yes, I think just like I said earlier, it's a matter of the government prioritizing the development and improvement of the educational sector. It's just about prioritization. What is the priority of the government? And I believe it can do that. because there's a lot that has gone wrong in the educational sector. A lot of corruption even in the educational sector, and the quality of graduates that are being turned out every single year from across the country are also a reflection of what's happening, the degradation in the quality and the very bad shape of things, educationally speaking. So I would say the government has to focus on developing the educational sector and then ensure that poverty is dealt with. There's multi-sectoral, multi-level poverty. One of the programs we're doing in Lagos, where our organization is carrying out currently, is on enrollment of trafficked children into school. And we've been able to enroll about 110 children into school, into a particular school in Lagos, the Okera Primary School. And it is just depressing because that is just the reality, that so many children are out of school, and not just out of school. The situation is so bad with families that they are trafficking their children, underage people, underage children, as house help as young as 6 years to work as house helps. And so there are about 2-3 communities close to our office in Lagos where we've enrolled about 110 children, about 108, 110 children in the last 1 year, starting in January last year. And about 97 to 98% of those children are from a particular community in Benue State, a predominantly farming community. And the parents give their children over, young children, to agents, and then they bring them to Lagos, or some of their relatives here go to pick. Some bring about 10 children, and those children are hawking for them. They are hawking groundnut in groundnut season, they are hawking plantain, they are hawking banana in pawpaw season, they are hawking pawpaw, and they're all over the Abah area where we stay, where our office is situated. And so when we got information about all of this, it's been going on for years, but when we got credible information, adequate information, we're able to get the children and started enrolling them in school. And we told the guardians, the people that brought them, if you don't allow these children to go to school, we're going to report you at the government house, we'll report you to police. And we enter the compromised state so that for the good of these children, and we say, okay, these children can go hawking, but it has to be in the evening. Now, Lagos State Child's Rights Act, Domesticated Child's Rights Act of 2017, says children should not be sent out in the morning to hawk, whether they are with their parents or not. But they still go out, and nobody is enforcing those rules. So we said the children can go out to hawk in the evening, because these children, these guardians, these people send their own children to school in the morning, and then they put trays on these children's hair. They put heads to go hawking in the morning while their own children are going to school. And we say you cannot do that. So, and we know that if we involve NATIP, the anti-trafficking agency, to say these children are going to be rescued, we'll take them back to their villages, I can bet you the next 1 week they're back. They may be back to other parts of Lagos because they already have established agents. Because the poverty that pushed these children out from the villages in the first place to Lagos to be selling and then not to be in school, the poverty, that poverty factor is very much present in the villages. So we say, okay, they can go hawking, but we're going to put them in school. They will be on our scholarship. And so they've been on our school, over 100 children. And it's been so amazing. The children are so interested. They're in school. They've retained schooling. They continue to progress in school since last year. And so it's poverty. And then we have the educational destiny of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children that have been destroyed, that have been damaged because of poverty. The parents cannot take care of them. They can barely feed them. They cannot send them to school. And so they push them to people in Lagos, who in turn send them money every month, 5,000 or so every month per child. So this is the result of poverty. So government has to do something about empowering people, especially at the grassroots, so that they don't resort to all kinds of criminality in order to survive. So that they don't compromise the education of their children in order to survive. Because by the time that educational destiny of their children is compromised, it's worse off. The vicious cycle of poverty continues. Because education is the meal ticket out of that poverty for those children and the parents and the entire society. So the government is not looking at it that way. And then there's so much corruption that is in the clog of the wheel of progress for many of these programs and policies. So it's something that we really have to talk about. And I believe that governments can make a difference in improving the educational sector, in ensuring that as many children as are possible are in school, and that the parents are empowered enough to retain the children in school when they have insight into what is actually playing out, especially at the grassroots. But the interest is there in the first place.
Yeah. It's profound to hear. I wish we all need to do more. I think overall we all individually, collectively, we need to do more, because it's just like you're saying, the worst part is you're creating an army of desperate individuals. I mean, there's no telling where that ends up. You can already see the kidnappings and all the things that happen. And I mean, the one that is currently happening in Abuja.
Young, educated, disillusioned people. And they are easily recruited into the army of criminals. So the more educated young people we have in Nigeria, the safer everybody is.
It is sad that people don't see it that way. But given that, it's exactly what you're saying. People would argue about the educational and infrastructure woes. They are bound to persist as long as policymakers and politicians send their children abroad for education and healthcare. People send their kids abroad people go abroad now to Egypt, even for headaches. Do you agree on that one? And would you support banning certain cadres of government officials, especially, from sending their awards abroad for educational and other purposes?
Okay, just to be clear. Yes, it's a very, I'm stammering because it's a very complicated issue. I would say that government officials utilizing government resources to go for health tourism should be discouraged, should be banned. And I think I saw something about government putting a stop to banning foreign trips for ministers or government officials. So I think that if they want to accept first-class medical care, they can use their resources, but not government official resources. And then government should be shamed, government should be pressurized, government should be called out to put up first-class health facilities in the system. I know that there was a state governor who was very ill. I think he was hypertensive or diabetic, and then he could not access, two state governors now, former state governors, who could not access, not even the president, other states, who could not access quality healthcare in their state. And by the time one was taken to Port Harcourt, another one to Lagos, it was too late, and both died. So imagine if they had put up first-class health system in their states when they were in power. They could have made use of it. Their family members also could have made use of it. And many of them choose to buy houses in Dubai, which they don't need. Houses in UK, in US, which will make a lot of difference. I work with vulnerable, marginalized groups, and there's a lot of poverty in these communities. And you will be surprised at the amount that will make a difference in the lives of families, in the lives of people. People don't need so much, and yet people are stealing billions that they don't need. So, and it's just incredible. It's just unspeakable. So I would say that it's a good option if there's a ban on public officials accessing foreign healthcare, foreign treatments with using government resources. But in terms of education, I'm an advocate for quality education. And I believe that majority of the people who get into offices as ministers and all of that, or even governors, before they got to these positions, they were already big in their own spheres of life, in their own capacity. And some of them their children already would have even been in school abroad. So I think it would be wishful thinking if we start saying something like the children should be brought home, they shouldn't be sent abroad. Many of the children are in school. I mean, how are we going to stop them at the airport? Many of them are already abroad schooling. Are we going to bring them back? So I think instead of focusing on all of that, which I believe is a distraction, we should focus on government putting up first class educational facilities in the country so that people that can access it, so that majority of Nigeria or every Nigerian can access it, and then they will have quality education, because that will not stop them from sending their children abroad. We have no way of stopping them. Many of those children don't even live in Nigeria. So how are you going to stop them in the first place? I think it's wishful thinking. We should just pressurize them and follow up the budgeting and ensure that a big chunk of resources are invested in education, and then we monitor the construction, we monitor the establishment of everything. Happily, we have civil society groups now that are into monitoring to ensure transparency in execution of projects, budgets, and all of that. They're there. So I think we should focus on ensuring transparency in the ensuring that the right budgeting is done to the right sectors, and then we follow up with ensuring that there's implementation, and then we achieve a situation where we have first class educational facilities. People go to Ghana for studying and all of that, and then many people go to send their children to private universities in Nigeria. I think that public institutions, public educational institutions can have those facilities and the qualities if we continue to pressure government rather than saying they shouldn't send their children abroad. Apart from government officials, other people send their children abroad. And like I said earlier, many of those children would have even been abroad before they became ministers and governors. So it will be a lot of distraction. We should just focus on the right thing.
No, understand that's an understandable position. You're more of practicality and
Yes.
solving the noun, and you don't want any noise. I'll take the different side, but I can perfectly see where you're coming from and why you want to make sense. Given that, would you say Nigerian children are hampered by cultural practices? I mean, you alluded to some of the things that happened to you growing up, like polygamous homes, which are very common in Nigeria. Most of them are very poorly structured. Most of them are, even in the best case scenario of polygamy, most of the people that are polygamous, for as an example, should not be polygamous because of the financial implications and other implications. So, but that amongst other things, social, would you say, if you'd put that as cultural practice, if you'd put other things as cultural practices, like the lack of care in some communities about female menstrual periods and what to do about it, in order not to disadvantage the kids. So would you say those cultural practices hamper Nigerian children? If so, could you detail those ones or other ones you'd say hamper Nigerian children?
Okay, so yes. Personally, growing up in a polygamous family was a mixed bag for me, because it has its ups, it has its lows and all of that. It has its ups and downs. So it was not entirely bad, because growing up in that kind of large community of people helps you hone your socialization skills. It helps to hone your adaptation skills. It helps to hone your accommodation attitude. So I learned a lot. And then you are streetwise from a very young age, because we used to eat in very large trays, and you have to be smart. If not, you are just going to go hungry for the afternoon. Yes. And you have 10 children gathered around one tray, and you cannot eat with spoon, because spoon will be so slow. Yes. I think I should write about my growing up. I've had it in my brain, but then I'm not happy.
I would love to read it.
Yes. Very, very interesting. So it's actually very, very interesting. Though it has its own bad side, but there were also good sides to it, and it was really fun in those days. It was really fun. So, but incidentally, I think it's only one of my father's children that went into polygamy. Nobody wanted to get into polygamy. One of the sons, yes.
What is polygamy?
Stressful for the man at the top, yes. Just so stressful. So I think what I would say, besides period poverty, which you've touched, period poverty is not a culture. It's just an economic situation. an economic situation. The lack of resources and the lack of economic power to be able to manage a natural phenomenon. And so, there's one of the things that hampers education and development among that in children actually is girl marriage. And this is being practiced in several parts of Nigeria as we speak. And it's getting worse because of the economic situation right now, where parents, especially from low-income backgrounds and very far-flung rural areas, would want to marry off their teenage daughters, even those are not even attained teenage yet, so that they can take up the burden of feeding extra mouth in their family. So many mouths. So and then it's a major issue. Even in Lagos here, there are issues of we've done a documentary on. I've done a personal special report on girl marriage in Lagos communities, and then we did a video documentary on girl marriage in Lagos. So it's something that is still prevalent that needs to be stopped. There's a 2003 Child Rights Act which criminalizes child marriage, and many states have domesticated it, including Lagos. 2017 Child Rights Act of Lagos State, 2007 Child Rights Act of Lagos State, 2017 Child Protection Policy. But then they are not enforced, and people do not even have the basic information that what is being done to me is a crime and where to report. And so that NGOs are trying their best, some agencies are trying their best, but then child marriage is a major thing, and teenage pregnancy, people need information, people need a lot intervention where in communities where sexual violence is rife, so that the tendency to rape children, put them in family ways and get them out of school can be stopped when the perpetrators are dealt with. So, and we also have female genital mutilation, which is still prevalent in many parts of the country. And we've had it's an ongoing program we have in our organization. And we've had people come to talk about their near-death experiences, even in Lagos here, having to undergo female genital mutilation, and someone who came and she lost her sister. So that was a life that was lost, a preventable death. And then all the potentials she could have become, all of her destiny, her entire future, everything died with her, her 12-year-old sister, because of a female genital mutilation and attendant bleeding. So these are some of the issues that hamper children's education. But we want to point out child marriage and in relation to that, poverty. So these are some of the issues that that we need to shine more light on. And when we talk about child marriage, people talk about just the far-flung, impoverished rural communities, not knowing that in cities like Lagos, Port Harcourt, the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, that these things are happening, especially among the low-income communities where people move in from their communities, their villages, with their culture of marrying off their children. So whether they're in the city or not, they marry them off. And then a girl's life and all the potentials she has is stunted, because from the age of 12, 14, you become a mother to someone when you should be a child yourself. And then all the possibilities of getting education and all that you can be are just thwarted because of the culture of child marriage.
Yeah, that's understand. That's profound. It's these things are very disturbing, and it's good that you have set out to shine light on them. I think people, not just locally but globally, should know about it. I remember when Bring Back Our Girls was a thing. So I was working in a very large multinational, the largest shipping company. It still is, and everybody would have worked with people from around the world, and everybody was very concerned. You know, if I was some scrupulous person, I would have opened up a GoFundMe and put all the money. But I did not do that. And not to be raised any funds. I just told them if they wanted to help out or any of those things, they can write to their congressmen here in the US or whichever country they were in. Or I couldn't recommend anybody.
Yes, that reminds me. Insecurity also plays a major part in the underdevelopment of education in Nigeria. There's so many young people, children that are in internally displaced camps. They're running away, and insecurity is now being renewed across the north. You see a lot of kidnappings happening in Abuja, people moving away, being displaced from some of the communities because they don't know if they will come for them and kidnap the entire families. In parts of the Middle Belt, uh, uh, entire communities are still being wiped out by marauding herdsmen, or Fulani militias, and little to nothing is being done. So this displaces families. If you end as a child, if you survive it, and then you're going to be displaced, you are orphaned or you're just uprooted from your communities, and then education is not something that is a priority anymore. It's all about survivor, and that's how young people drift into the cities, drift into other parts of the country with no education, no skills, and then some drift into all kinds of criminal activities. So security is something that we really need to fix in Nigeria.
Yeah, yeah, it's deep. It's understand. You've been very generous for your time. Just have a few more questions. I know you're a
Yeah,
very
no problem.
busy person.
No problem.
Very
I'm
busy.
enjoying
It's
this conversation very much.
I'm getting enlightened. It's things I didn't think about from that perspective. I'm coming to see it from. Oh yeah, that is true. It's
Yeah,
very.
we actually need a GoFundMe for our uh, period poverty campaign. Well, we shot a movie on it's titled "Give Us This Day, Give Us This Day Our Monthly Pads." Give us this day.
That's a good slogan. I like
Yes,
that.
it's part of our campaign to push for free distribution of sanitary products to schoolgirls in public schools in
Huh?
Nigeria. So, and one of my friend, Dr. Uche, she saw it and then she did something like a GoFundMe in US and raised, I think, over $3,000 for us. We're able to get part for girls, women and girls across Lagos, Ogun State, Kaduna, Abuja, Benue. It was huge. Yes, so we still need that kind of thing because when I talk about period poverty, I always say it's so vicious because uh menstruation is not something that you can just postpone. You just have to
Oh yeah.
attend to it as a woman, as a girl. I know you don't really, you may not understand as a man, but as long as you are within the reproductive age bracket, you're menstruating every month, you have to attend to it. You just have you have to go hungry. You have to, I mean, your school feeding money as a girl, you have to, I mean, just use it for the parts. And I go to some of the communities and I ask them, so what do you use? And they said they have to remove their mattress, their parents' mattress from the bed and use every month. Some use rags, very unhygienic products. And I just laugh and I tell them, I said, you keep removing the mattress. One day you wake up and there will be no mattress on the bed anymore. You're lying down on the spring or on the wood. I just laugh and then we talk about it. But it's actually a serious issue that has
Yeah.
to be attended to. And any act, any gesture of intervention from government will make a little difference. When we go out and we distribute pads, sometimes they're so excited, at least this month's own is settled. But then there's so much, our resources are limited. It's government that has all the resources to make a sustainable difference. That's why we keep talking and talking. It's a very serious issue.
Yeah, we will we should you send us the video and this any links they can donate to. We'll definitely put it in the footnotes of this episode so people can
That'd be
people
great.
should
Yes.
donate. It is a serious issue. The focusing on the media. I mean, I guess you'd say this, but it is good to hear you. But would you say what are the unique problems children face from exposure to social media in Nigeria?
Okay.
Like, I hope you got the question. Like, essentially, what would be the unique problems that children would face getting exposed to social media in Nigeria? What are there? If you compare it to America, for instance, TikTok is a lot more distracting. Put it kindly, right? But are there such problems in Nigeria in terms of exposure or even lack of exposure? Because some of these things I would have assumed that should be more prominent on social media in Nigeria, but I'm not seeing them. I'm not seeing those conversations a lot more as well. So
I think that the social media, the internet in general, has a very corroding influence on young people, especially. Now it's we are all distracted with the internet. We're all distracted with social media, and I think they've termed every one of us as the distracted generation because we spend hours every day on social media, just looking, peering at people putting up their pictures, their videos, and not really getting inspiration for the most part. Not getting anything, just looking. So we're just hooked on the internet. Well, it's actually it's worse for children because they are very impressionable, and then children cannot make the right judgment for the most part. I will watch something on Instagram, for instance, and I said, no, this is rubbish. And I just unfollow the person. I said, no, I can't just mess up my mind by following up this person, putting up this kind of rubbish content. I just unfollow the person. I even just block sometimes. But children, most times, cannot make that judgment. They are very impressionable and they cannot choose between bad and good. So you see children seeing some transgender people on social media, and then the next thing they also want to be transgender. Now I don't have anything against people being transgender, going into transgender lifestyle. I don't have anything about LGBT people. People have a right to the life they want to live, and I'm actually an activist. But then children should be able to make the right choices, and most of the time they do not make the right choices.
yeah,
And then they copy very terrible lifestyles. So it's a very corroding, very corrupting, and destructive influence on children. Like you said, we're not talking enough about this. I think we should
yeah.
talk much more about this and how children can actually be controlled. Most parents in Nigeria don't even know that you can put control on the phone of your children. Most don't. They just buy a smartphone for the children, or the children use their school fees or get money from wherever, and then buy smartphone, and boom, they're just everywhere. They're just exposed to the entire world, the bad, the good, and the ugly, and it's terrible.
Yeah, I was going to add, while I was in Nigeria, I mean, I guess, you know, it's been a long time since I left Nigeria. I was surprised in seeing the young preteens, teenagers, they were very engaged with Big Brother Africa, which, you know, it's its own thing. I just felt the level of engagement was interesting. It was interesting. It really wasn't a thing, at least when I was growing up, but overall, would you say the media are sufficiently aware and engaged in discussing the problems pertaining to children in Nigeria?
No, we're not. We need to do much more. Like we talked a lot about period poverty, and happily for us, many people are catching up. Many of the media people are catching up, being very supportive and helping us to highlight the issues. Then gender-based violence. Our organization runs a shelter. It's one of the few women shelter in Nigeria, and we've had a lot of support from the media because there's a lot of gender-based violence, especially against women and girls, domestic violence, rape, and all of that, all kinds of abuse, and that needs to be highlighted. And then safe spaces where the people can be rescued and where they can stay. So we run a shelter, and then there are so many issues like what you mentioned, the negative impact of internet, of social media on young people. I think we really need to talk much more about the issues. We really need to talk much more about them because it's just overwhelming, and it's not just for children, even everyone, because there's so much pressure. You go to Instagram and then you see someone is already in Canada, is doing well, and then you're here hawking pure water, and then you're seeing it. You're seeing the person. You're peering at the person, and you feel that you are not as a young person. You've not arrived. You've not achieved anything, and you see people committing suicide. almost every single day in Nigeria because of influence. And the social media plays a major part. There's a lot of pressure. And then for young people, it's worse. Like I said earlier, they cannot decipher between the good, the bad, and the ugly. They swallow everything. Bad lifestyle of musicians who are supposed to be role models to young people. They're promoting smoking, drug abuse through their videos and their social media platforms and all of that. Very bad influence on young people. So these are some of the things that we really need to keep talking about. And like I said, also mentioned earlier, we started we're about kicking off a major national campaign on drug abuse among young people. And one of the things we talk about is the terrible influence of our musicians who are into drug abuse, and they are actually branding, hawking those drugs on their social media pages and their music videos. And many children are getting into it, and they're not getting any help because we don't have enough rehabilitation facilities. Majority of the children that go into the drugs do not even have parents that have the resources to that will let them access quality rehabilitation facilities. So, and it all just started from access to social media and looking at the lifestyle of the bad role models, copying it, and then getting themselves into the mess.
Yeah. How would you describe your experience lobbying government officials in Nigeria over these issues? If you have any, how would you describe that if you have? I know typically you've already said that that's not typically your forte. You don't really get deep into, but in terms of when you have to, I'm sure Nigeria is Nigeria. Anywhere you'd have to lobby, but how would you describe your?
Initially, I wasn't really keen on engaging government officials. I hated anything politician. But then when you work, the reality of when you do this kind of work, what will actually make a difference ultimately are policies, which will have wide-ranging, sustainable influence. And so you have to meet with government officials, policymakers. So in Lagos, where we're based, we have very good working relationship with the Ministry of Women Affairs, the agencies on domestic violence, because much of our work is around them. But on a federal level, we're not doing much engagement. We hope to scale up to that in the course of this year. But what we've done in the last, by the way, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary 2 days ago. It was supposed to be in December, but we had it in the school 2 days ago. So for the next phase of our work, we'll be doing a lot of policy advocacy and meeting with the politicians, the policymakers. So I think it's getting better. Like the organization where I worked before, it's getting better, even right from them. There's a lot of highlights, a lot of spotlight on government activities. So the politicians and the policymakers know that they cannot just black us out just like that. They have to be accountable. So I think they're a little bit more accessible. And for the most part, I think it's not so bad. But then it's not just about engaging them or even passing these laws. It's about ensuring that the laws are enforced. That is where the major challenge is actually.
Yeah.
Ensuring that the laws are enforced.
So when the NSAS movement took place in 2022, what would you say that meant to you and your organization?
I think it gave us hope that young people can have a voice, and young people's voice can be very loud. Their presence can be visible, and they can upturn the system. That young people have powers that they do not even know exist. So that the people in power cannot just continue to resort to impunity and take us for granted. There has to be a limit to impunity, because when the society rises against the people in power, which, by the way, are just a small percentage, that there is no hiding place for them and that they can be endangered. And so I think even the system is more cautious now about how they treat issues about young people and all of that, and maybe a bit more receptive. So young people have enormous power. And then they have the number. About 70% of the Nigerian population they comprise of young people. So young people are actually the most dynamic, the most powerful and influential power. Just that it has not translated into governance. But I think gradually that young people will get there.
Yeah. So, in the midst of all this, as we wound down, where do you find the energy to keep going? I mean, I know you talked about is that the only, because that would be profound if that keeps you going, day in, day out. Where do you find the energy when the challenges you face to get up? Is it family? Is it, just thinking about your childhood? Is it people that you've seen? Like I personally think people that sometimes you've seen progress that have benefited and lifted themselves out could be very energetic as well. But I don't know where you would say you'd find your energy to keep going.
Yes, sometimes I have a lot of burnout as well. Sometimes I have a lot of burnout because sometimes you work in the communities and sometimes you feel maybe your work is not appreciated. Maybe you feel that we run a shelter, and then when people come to the shelter and we say food is free, accommodation is free, you can stay up to a month, some say up to 3 months. And then there's that sense of disbelief because they say, all this for free. So sometimes you work and then people are suspicious that, no, why are you doing this? What's in it for her? So that gets me depressed when people don't think that people can just can have a humanitarian heart and want to do something just for the love of it and just for God and for humanity. But then I keep going because I see, in spite of my burnout and occasional discouragements, I keep going because we see results all the time. We see results all the time. And the theme of our 10th anniversary celebration is appreciation. We're just appreciating God. We're just happy because for the most part, it's been smooth. Somehow, I don't know. I think God is with us. It's been smooth. And then we see the result. Look at about 110 children that was put in school. And they're among some of the most serious students in that school, Okera Primary School. The school went ahead to name one of their inter-house sports houses after us. They named it Sea Hope House at the last inter-house sport. And then that house won the overall cup. So these are things that really inspire us and then encourage us to keep doing more. And I pray a lot. Sometimes when I'm discouraged, I pray. As a Christian, I pray for more strength, for more inspiration, especially because we see the results. We see the result. People that were in school, that were not in school, they are not in school. Women, widows that were like down and out, we're able to empower them with skills training and with grants. Women suffering domestic violence, and then they come back to us with good reports. People who were driven from their houses and all of that, thrown into the street, we take them into the shelter. And then within weeks, you see that their complexion is changed, they're happy, and they're back. We're able to get them accommodation, and then they're happy. So all these things really make us happy. So it's inspiring. And my biggest inspiration are my parents, my mother especially, because she just lived a life of giving. She lived a life of giving. Even when she was old and she wasn't very, she died in her late 70s, 20 months ago. Even when she was a bit frail, she kept, and we had program in Benue, she would still send me list of women that I should put on our program, especially during COVID-19 and the occasional festivity relief programs. She just kept giving and giving and giving till her last day. And somehow, I believe that because she was always giving, I grew up actually seeing like 10 people staying with us. She would bring her nephews from the village, everyone, and then she just took care of everyone. Now, we were about 30 in the family. Christmas time, my mom would sew clothes for all the children in the family. Not just her own children, the same quality of clothes for all the children. And many of the children actually saw her as like, she was the number 4 wife, but they saw her like the mother. Yes, she was number 4. But they saw her as everybody's mother. And my mom is the only person I know who is not a celebrity who had at least 20 children named after her. I've never seen that in my entire life. My mother has about 20, and many of them are adults, some are teenagers. Many of them came for her burial in Benue in July 2022. Her neighbors will name their children after her. Her customers in the market will name their children after her. Her relatives, my father will name some of the children, my father's wife will name their children after her because she was that good. And I knew because she was good that some of the things we've had as children, some of the openings we've had, some of the favors, the grace has been a fallout of what she did. That is transcending to our life. So I say, okay, I want this kind of transgenerational blessing for my children as well. So I want to be like my mom. And my dad, in his heydays, was always fighting for people. And he did that till he became old. He's in his late 80s now. He'll be involved in court cases to fight for his neighbors, his relatives, and all that. He was someone who helped people. And then he was a local health worker, helping towards the eradication of smallpox in his village, saved so many lives. So I have parents that cared about humanity. So I just know that I can't do otherwise, especially because I have a bigger education. I'm educated and I have more exposure and I have access to bigger resources. So I cannot disappoint them. I just have to be the good daughter that they've always wished me to be.
That's
Keep inspiring myself based on that.
That's good to hear. We got the final two questions to round up. So what gives you hope about Nigeria and what leaves you deeply anxious about Nigeria?
I think my hope in Nigeria is about the vast human resources, that one day we're going to get it right. We always got it right with Peter Obi. We were almost there. And I was just crazy about Peter Obi. And this was Peter Obi's admiration, Peter Obi's reception cut across ethnic
lines, true.
cut across religion. And we say, at last, this is it. And then it was like it became a mirage. So we are hoping that we'll get it again. But Nigeria has some of the most brilliant, most skilled, most creative people with some of the greatest potentials in the world. And so someday we're going to get it right. It's just a matter of the politician leadership mainly. So that has been our problem, but we're going to get it right. I watched a recent interview with Chimamanda, the great author. And I've watched that interview several times. I watched it again yesterday. And she said she went into the US and her professor was surprised. You saw a look of surprise on her professor's face because she had the best essay. And then she said, race is an issue in US. This is what she had encountered because people believe that Black people are not expected to be at the top of anything, to do well in anything. They are not supposed to be the best. But then in Nigeria, there's no issue of race in Nigeria. It could be ethnic or ethno-religious differences and all of that. Then she made a very profound statement. Then she said, I was shocked because I thought the man should know that Nigerians are some of the most brilliant people on earth. I mean, that blew me off. And that is it. Anywhere in the world you see Nigerians, they are the best. They are the best. Even in the literary circle, because I'm a writer, every single year in most of the top literary awards, competitions in the world, Nigerians are always at the top. The Kane Award, I don't know if the Kane Award is there. Most of the time, the biggest winners, the best novels are from Nigerians. And then I heard one of the judges say that there's something about the waters of Nigeria. There's something about the waters. There's a creativity, like there's a dense creativity. There's something there, the richness, the depth. And so Nigerians are the ones that will, like Peter Obi would say, Nigerians are the ones that will rescue our country. And we'll get there because we have all it takes. We are blessed by God. And then my fear is with the leadership. Imagine someone getting into the humanitarian agency where you are supposed to make a difference in the lives of people. And then you get there and you start helping yourself. And then you start diverting monies that you don't need. I mean, what do I need ₦1 billion for? I mean, why? What am I going to buy with ₦1 billion? we just have basic needs as human beings. Why can't we abide by that? Why can't we be like white people? I talk about white people all the time because I've been exposed in the US and UK. And most people that I know live very simple lives. How would you spend still 90 billions or 80 something billion? The former accountant general stole about 80 something billion naira. Why do you need that kind of money? So imagine what he could have done in terms of providing scholarship, good roads, welfare package, of welfare, putting it in the welfare system. I mean, building hospitals, and one person would divert all of that money, which you don't need till you die. You just die. How many years you have left on earth? So it's about the leadership and the fact that they will push the country they want to push us to the verges, to the fringes. And then if care is not taken, they'll push us to a point that there will just be a revolt that will upturn everything. That's my biggest fear. But as for my hope, is in the Nigerian populace, the fact that we have all it takes. It's just the leadership to provide the right resources, the right opportunities to make this country function well, function optimally well.
Yeah, very interesting. Like I said, I spent the summer with my 4 kids and wife in Nigeria. Yeah, we're there for a whole month. We did the whole road. We're there for a whole month. It's very interesting even for them. I remember the first time we took our daughter to, our oldest is a girl, next one is a boy. And we took her to Nigeria, and she landed in Lagos, and she was like, wow, this is just like New York.
Yes.
It's just that there are no peach people, meaning Caucasians. Just everybody's black. She was I think 4 or 5 then. It's a couple years ago.
Wow.
She's 10 now. But it's very interesting and very inspirational even for kids. And finally, for you, if you asked about the condition of Nigerian children 20 years from now, how would you describe that prognosis? How would you optimistically, how would you see it, or how do you want to see it 20 years from now? And how would you see it if you want to be a realist, if you want to be an optimist, if you want to be a pessimist, if you want to be a combination of all three? Feel free. How would you see the Nigerian children 20 years from now and in 2044? See.
The conditions would have improved dramatically. Should have been improved dramatically because we have more of watchdogs now who are speaking truth to power, who are holding the people in power accountable. So we will see a situation where more and more of the resources are utilized for the good of the populace, and then it will reflect in the children as well. Recently, the former Speaker of the House of Reps, who is also a chief of staff, who is the chief of staff to the president, put up very big hostel structure facility in the University of Lagos, which is where I did my master's. And it was really applauded. And apart from that, he built hospitals here. He built a lot of things around the state, which is very impressive. So I see that I'm seeing the situation where many more people will be challenged and they want to do more, because right now we know they publish the constituency allowances that they receive. So people are going to question them. So what did you do with it? This is the era of social media. We've seen videos of people going to the north with jeeps, vehicle that cost as much as 20 million, 30 million into very impoverished villages, and then they are being mobbed and driven out by the villages because the only thing they came to show off in the village are the expensive vehicles, the cars, not the outcome of nothing about good governance, nothing about structures. And then there are organizations, budget and code that are out to monitor implementation of the budgets. They have a list of the budget, the names of the list of the structures by each each lawmaker in their constituency, and then they follow up to see whether those things have been done, and they will publish the ones that were not done. So, and those people will be called out, and then they are held accountable. So I think that things will improve. Things will improve as long as we continue talking and we're not afraid. But the problem is that and it's not going to be automatic. It's going to be gradual, because the people that are supposed to serve as a watchdog, the media, the judiciary, have been deeply compromised. But of course, it's not everyone that has bowed to Ba. It's not everyone that has bowed to Ba. So we believe that the exceptional few will make a lot of difference by calling for accountability, by speaking truth to power. And so children will have more access to better education, better facilities, and I think things will get better, especially because social media is there and everybody's on social media. They're seeing what you're doing. They know the amount of money you get. You have to account for it. There's no hiding place for you. See what happened during NSAS. So I think the lawmakers and the politicians, the policymakers themselves know that there's a limit to which they can resort to impunity, in which they can misbehave. There's much more accountability, much more watchdog position, even by the generality of the public now. So I think I see things getting better. I see a tremendous change in the next 20 years. Maybe I'm an incurable optimist. I believe.
I find that people we talk with that live in Nigeria tend to have an incurable level of optimism to a large degree, which is a good thing. I mean, I think you needed to survive. I don't see how else. I mean, to some degree, I mean, my optimism would be that there needs to be a cosmoclismic change. There needs to be some revolutionary change of some sort, which every country, I'm a graduate student of history, so, you know, in every country you've seen that is developed and developing has had that change. In this, it's in some cases it doesn't end up well, I agree, but generally you see not just one, you see multiple. America, France, Britain had military rule for a long time, beheaded their kings and all that, had a lot of reform, so it doesn't matter where it is. Pick France, multiple, same thing. Pick wherever it is, multiple centuries of that level of action happening. In some cases, it's just a single person, like leaking you in Singapore, ends up being the catalyst for change. In some cases, but there is some cosmically something that is massive that goes into the system and just shocks the system into a direction which most times it's right, but sometimes it does end up wrong. I just think I don't see how Nigeria gets there without that. That's not, but you know, people have this positivity, and it's good. It's good. It's good to have that at yourselves.
Yeah, that's what keeps us driving, because some of the situations can be suicide-inducing, but then you want to stay afloat and you want to thrive against the odds. So we believe that we'll get there. That things go better.
It's been nice having you on the podcast. I didn't talk much about Unical. Actually, my father grew up in Akwa Ibom, so he spoke Efik fluently. So we still have property in Calabar, actually, funny enough. Like I said, I did promote property. It's a fun place. I spent a lot of time back home. I mean, I was born and brought up in Lagos, but I spent a lot of time going to Calabar. It's a fun place it's mainstay of the groups there. It doesn't matter which ones, whether the Abahs or the FX, the BBOs from Akwa Ibom, or the Igbo groups. Actually, the lady that anyway, that's a whole. Is an Igbo. There are Igbo groups obviously in Benue in this thing, but that's a whole. People tend to, actually after the Civil War, people tended to, you go to Cross River, for instance, Cross River, it's like Rivers. There was an absolute change of names in Cross River to disassociate themselves with Igbos, with what they saw as core Igbos, which is very funny. So if you come to even parts of Benue, they speak more central. They speak intelligible Igbo, where you're like, listening, you're like, yeah, I actually understand what you're saying. So, but you know, there's always that misunderstanding about those calls. So it's very interesting when you get to those places. The lady that did this still in her her middle name, I think, is Ada or something. I can't remember. But it doesn't really matter. To me, I don't think there's a centralized. I think Igbo is what you make of it generally. I don't even think anybody, but it's funny. I'm a student of history.
What people get wrong most of the time is they look at the aggressiveness of the average Igbo person, and then they try to see it from the negative light. Igbos are very pushful. They're very pushful, very ambitious. And that is the kind of thing we need in Nigeria. The Igbos have been in power in Nigeria. Obi Ezekwesili, who is a lovely senior friend of mine, Dr. Okonjo Iweala, and the late Dora Queen, they've done excellently well. And we almost got Peter Obi into Aso Rock, but he was denied, which is another story for another day. So I think I'm saying it maybe because of my personal sentiment. I have a thin Igbo blood, a little streak of Igbo blood, because my great grandmother was from Nsukka. Yes, so that's why my dad is a very light skinned person. He's the only light skinned person among his siblings, and that he said he took it from his grandmother or great grandmother or his great grandmother.
I would just rather say that there's shed blood.
Sorry?
I would just rather say there's shed blood before anybody thinks when I say people think, oh, it's right now, I'm just like, there's a very recent shed blood, but everybody's what they make of it. I don't really care. I don't see if you're from Rivers and you were Igbo in 1970 or people and you're not Igbo and yes, I'm like, you're not Igbo, man. That's fine. As far as culturally, you don't believe you're not Igbo, that's fine. But if you're talking of anthropologically, like, I'm just like, it's shed blood. It's really the same. But it doesn't matter to me. I'm from Enugu. It doesn't.
Okay, you mean some of the villages in River State where everybody's name is Igbo, but they said they are not Igbo.
Yeah, when it was Rivers, Cross River, all these places, they all very they were all accepting of their Igbo-ness, most of them up until 1970, pretty much. But to me, it doesn't matter. Like if they say I'm not, I think there are two separate ways to look at it. I can come out and say I don't have shared blood with my siblings. That's fine. I'm not going to talk with you. I don't care. I have one sibling. I'm not going to talk with you, and that's fine.
No, but the blood is there.
Exactly. So you can't say you don't have shared blood. I don't think anybody dominates the other person. You can as well say that Igbos are Ikwe. To me, it's not that say the other way around and say Ikwes are Igbos. No, you can say Igbos are Ikwe people. Really, you can say either comes from the other place. It doesn't matter to me. From an ethnical perspective.
What happens mostly in my place is that there's been a lot of intermarriage. I think they still do intermarriage.
Yeah. So it's a shared culture, Benway, and it's a shared. I passed through. We spent so much time there.
My village is right at the boundary between Benway and
Enugu, yeah. It's a shared culture. They always, both sides always fit right in. They got no problems. Even when I was passing through and they were talking, I'm like getting some of the time, like, this is
my dad's siblings. Almost all of them bear Igbo names. My dad's name is Onu. Yes, it's your immediate younger sister is Enyangu, and his brother, the second to the last, who died during the Biafran War, was Chukuma.
There you go. So it's very, again, it is just very interesting. It's just again, there are two separate things. People always need to separate how you socially identify and what you are. You can always say my siblings are not my siblings, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. I don't think. These people are Igbo. I don't think I think you could say, like I said, I think you could say, Igbos are Benny people. You could say that. I'm like, that's fine. I don't really, but when you talk about anthropological studies and sociological studies and you come down and you take a look at, and everybody that takes a look at these things would classify these things as they are, it comes down and they belong to the same family. It's like 270. But it shows the impact of Nigeria in terms of it's interesting to me. I'm a graduate student, PhD student in history, so it's like I get it, man. When people start, like, I get it, I don't really care. Even when I get to my village, the Igbo in my village is very different. I have to I didn't grow up speaking it, so I have to sit down for a couple of days to reform my brain to understand what they're saying.
In Lagos, I met someone, a security man around Oyingbo, I think about 5-6 years ago. And then we got talking. So I said, this mark you have, it looks like Benue mark. But some of us have, they give us some marks that look like Igbo marks. So I said, are you from Benue? He said, no, it's from Igbo. It's from Igbo, but during the war, his family had to migrate into a part of Kogi State. So they gave him the marks. Okay, no, it was actually Kogi mark. He has this mark that Kogi people have. So I said, so why do you have Kogi mark? He said they needed to identify as Kogi people because of the stigma around Igbo people. So, and he still identifies as Kogi.
But originally, they're Igbos in Kogi too. So anyway, they are I don't know, whichever way you want to put it. Igbos are Kogi people, doesn't matter. I don't really care. I don't think there's any this thing, but it's very to me it's very interesting.
The Civil War really shifted a lot of ground.
Oh yeah, it did. It shifted ground, and that's another whole conversation in terms of, but it's something maybe hopefully we'll get to invite you back. We'll get to invite you back, talk more about it. I always like to just listen to the anthropological aspect on see how people identify themselves.
I'm not an authority. I prefer to talk more about children, women and children, and there's a lot more about period poverty. A lot more about it.
Yeah, we will. This
drug addiction.
Okay, this is an ongoing series that we have. So we bring in people in the civil liberty space and that have different interests and different focuses, and so we appreciate you being on the program, and hopefully we will invite you back in the near future.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Let me stop this here.